Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. Amma ba'd. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to Send in the Community, another show of Send in the Community. Today with me, Hafiz Muhammad Umar. And in today's show, I'm joined by an amazing guest. She's called Mariola. Welcome to the show, Mariola.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining us, Mariola. Mariola is currently based in London and she is an amazing inspiration to so many people. Mariola runs an Instagram page called Chronicles Community. That's the CRONICALLS space community. And it's basically looking at chronic, rare, invisible illnesses and disability. And Mariola advocates for accessibility, inclusion, and equality. For those of you who might have come across somebody with a hidden disability, an invisible disability, perhaps an invisible illness, or a rare condition or a chronic condition, will know how difficult it is to get people to understand the nature of that condition. And if you're somebody who thinks, actually, it's new to me, please stay tuned because Mariola and I will try and go through what chronic illnesses are and how they manifest themselves and what support can be provided, what arrangements can be made, whether it's at school, college, university, or in a place of work, to accommodate somebody with either a chronic, rare, or an invisible illness. So, Mariola, before we go into the illnesses and conditions, we want to know a bit about you as a person and Mariola. So, tell us a bit about yourself, please, about your early life.
Yes,
And
of course. I'm originally from Mexico, been in London for the past 6 years. I'm a psychologist by training, and activism is something I kind of stepped into by how my life was made, by my life experiences. Over time, I saw how common experiences were rarely challenged, and how people were being left behind, how we were being left behind. And I felt a responsibility to speak up and turn personal experiences into something constructive that could contribute to change. And outside of my activism work, I am a daughter, I'm a sister, I'm a proud aunt to a 6 year old, a dog
um,
mom to two rescue dogs that I have with me right now. They
amazing.
are, one of them is on my lap at the moment. And these roles have strongly shaped how I show up in my life.
Amazing, wonderful. So why did you feel the need to take on advocacy for chronic and rare illnesses?
Well, I became unwell quite young when I was around 16. I was in high school, it's challenging for every teenager already. And I was in high school. So it was a very, very difficult time for me and for my family. I was someone with a lot of energy, very sporty. So that change was quite abrupt, not only for me, but for my family. I started experiencing a lot of symptoms that I've never experienced before, a lot of fatigue that would not get better, severe pain, extreme exhaustion. And there was a period where I became mostly bedbound, and nobody could comprehend what was going on. Friends would be like, "What's wrong with her?" Some days I would be fairly okay, and the next day I wouldn't be able to stand up. And people would keep saying, "You don't look sick, you look fine, like there's nothing visibly wrong with you." So basically had to drop out of school. I was basically homeschool. I would just drop in to high school for tests. So I spent a lot of time. At the time I was living in Mexico. I'm from there. So we spend like a lot of time going from doctor to doctor, getting no answers. Like doctors would tell us it's just a phase. So you're a teenager, you're going through a lot of hormonal changes. and they would tell me it's all in your head, but yet I knew something was very wrong with me, like, but at the same time you start questioning your your mental capacity, because everybody doubts you, and there's like no credibility in young girls, especially in women. Like, you're crazy. Basically, you're put into this category of, no, she's crazy, she's making this up. And so it was quite hard. It was very challenging. Basically, you start doubting yourself a lot, and but yet there was something in me that was like, no, you need to keep searching for an answer, because this is wrong. Like, there's something very wrong with you. Like, this is not normal, you know so my mom was, I mean, my dad helped a lot financially. It was very tough for him to see me like that, but he was there financially. And my mom was there, like, to take me to appointments, to take care of me. So after seeing around 14, 15 doctors in Mexico that had no answers, we made a decision to go to Texas, to Houston, Texas. And there I had, I think, a lot, like, a very lucky time that I met an amazing doctor called Dr. Hoffman. He was an internist, which in the UK would be like maybe a general doctor, but with a lot of knowledge. And he was the first doctor that truly saw me, that truly listened to me, and saw me also like as an individual, not just like, oh, this girl is just like looking for attention, because they will be like, oh no, you're like, go to a psychiatrist or go to therapy, which I was doing already. So he was the one that truly listened to me, believed in me, and looked at me as a person and said, okay, what's going on, and assessed me. I remember, I think the first appointment we were there for like 2 hours, and he listened to me. So I think that moment was life changing, and for me, it was not just in terms of treatment and diagnosis, but a moment of like restoring truth and dignity, which I think is fundamental for someone with with an illness and a disability. You feel, along all the tests and all the doctor's appointments and everything you go through, I feel you lose so much dignity. You're so exposed that you're left with so little, like, sometimes, like, of your own privacy, that you lose so much along the way. So I felt that I was gaining something back when I was seeing him, that I think that was the moment I was like, okay, I need to start advocating for myself. It was a very long journey, of course. Like, that was when I was 18. I'm now 35. So it has taken me a lot. I
Mm,
think it's it's one of the hardest things I've done in life, to advocate for myself, because I've encountered so many people that will knocked out my confidence. And and if I can say something that has transformed my journey into medical care and accessing care, it's to advocate for myself.
mm,
And yeah, that's how I've gotten into all
mm,
of this.
mm. Amazing. And thank you so much for sharing that very personal journey with us, Mariola. Listeners, if you have just tuned in, you're listening to the Send in the Community Show with me, Hafiz Muhammad Umar. And for today's show, we have an amazing lady called Mariola, Dr. Mariola, who's just been describing her journey so far. So if I could go back to those early days of your illness, Mariola, back in Mexico. You said you were in high school, you're a teenager. What were the first symptoms that came about which made you wonder, actually, is this, the normal expectation of my biological system changing, or is this more than that? Do I need to be worried or concerned? What were the first signs that got you thinking?
So my first signs, as I said, I was someone with lots of energy. I
Mm,
had done at the time all the sports you could think of. I was always doing something in the afternoon after school.
mm.
I had never experienced a headache in my life. I had never taken a nap in my life. So I started suddenly having the worst headaches, naps, pain in my body. So that was very unusual. I got I got a cold, and after that cold, it was like I never recovered. It was like I was, when you get a cold and you're really ill, but and your body it's like aching, and it's like I never recover from that cold. So those were like the first symptoms I that got me like, okay, there's something wrong with me.
No. And then how long did it take from those symptoms to actually getting a diagnosis?
Wow. So it was so I've got different I've got not only one disease. So my main diagnosis, it's called Addison's disease. So it's a rare disease. It's quite a complex disease. So for that, I was 16. So it took about 4 or 5 years, I guess, to get a proper diagnosis. And then when I moved here, it was quite complex because um I moved just before the pandemic.
Mm,
So the whole health system was like knocked out completely. So I came across, I was seeing my doctors in Houston. I was having my care. I was, diagnosed, and I was fairly okay. I was working back in Mexico. I mean, I had to switch jobs because what I was doing, I was a makeup artist. So what I was doing was quite stressful, and I was working long jobs, long hours, sorry. So I got to a point where I was like, okay, I really like this, but I also want to do something else with my life. So I started training as a psychologist. So I switched to that. And um, when I moved here, they were like, okay, we don't think you have Addison's disease. So basically, I stopped treatment. Like, I kind of switched to, it was a weird time because I kind of stopped some of my treatments and I got really ill. And then the pandemic happened. So that's when I started getting really ill. So it's been like 5 years for me that I've been like really ill. And for the last 3 months, I'm kind of seeing the light again, let's say. So that's when I started my advocacy work.
mm. Wow. So when you came over to the UK, did you come here to study, to work, for treatment,
Yeah, to
or
work.
to
So
work?
so I was very keen. My sister was living here by the time already. So I
Mm,
wanted to be near her, near my niece. So for me it was charities. I've seen here that there were lots of charities. For example, the charity of Addison's disease. I've learned a lot through that charity about my illness, because as it's an illness that it's very unknown, and also there was not a lot of information, and I've learned a lot through that charity, and I was like, wow, in the UK there seems to be a lot of information about that. I would want to go there, and I've seen a lot of charities doing amazing work. So I was like, okay, I would like to move there, maybe work in a charity, and I could make a difference. Always in my life I've been very I've I moved towards advocacy, and working. I've worked before with rescuing dogs. Like I've always liked doing like that kind of work. So I thought it was a good idea. But obviously, when I moved, the pandemic happened and everything shut down. So there was a period where it was quite challenging. I had to do other types of jobs. I was a lot in the hospital. So obviously, um, the whole idea, or my whole goal, had to take another path.
Yeah. Um, thank you. Thank you so much for that. And I think for anybody who's not familiar with Addison's disease, how would you describe it, Mariola?
So Addison's disease is a condition where your adrenal glands don't produce enough cortisol. So cortisol basically it's a hormone that you need for everything. So to manage your body temperature, to fight stress, to fight an illness, to fight an infection. Um, yeah. So basically, literally, you need it for everything.
Mm,
So if you don't produce it or if you don't produce enough, you die.
mm,
So yeah, it's quite challenging, and it's also for example, if I get an illness, I need to take more of it. Or if I have an infection, I need to take more. Sometimes I need IV, or I need a like emergency shot if I get unwell, or if I, for example, if someone is in a car crash or in an accident, they would need to have their injection because they are like in a very high stress moment. So it's an illness you also have to learn to manage yourself because, like all rare illnesses, it affects people differently. Even though you have the same one, it will affect you differently.
yeah. And as you mentioned there, it is a condition that has to be taken very seriously because it can be life-threatening if it isn't um,
Yes.
treated proportionately. And a lot of people with Addison's disease are also encouraged to carry a kit with them as well in case of an emergency. So, if they don't have anything to call 999 or at least, be able to give the injection themselves if they needed to. Um, and having had the diagnosis, um, has that made a difference for you in terms of moving on with life?
In terms, I'm sorry, in terms of,
In terms of getting on with life and doing things, education, leisure, work, etc. Has that made a difference for you?
yes, I think having had the diagnosis, first of all, it's made me take like more control in managing the illness. I think when I was when I saw a doctor again about a year and a half ago here, that finally explained again, okay, yes, you have this, and then they sent me to a nurse, like a specialist nurse, an endocrine nurse, and he was amazing. He explained to me everything, and he was like, you need to take control of this because you are the one that needs to manage it and learn to manage it and learn to listen to your body. And nobody else had told me that before, like nobody else had told me you need to listen to your body and learn from it. They usually in medicine is like doctors know best. We know best. We will treat you as we know. And actually, we know best. Patients know best. We know our bodies. So we are the ones that we need to manage it. We are the ones living in our illnesses for 5, 10, 15,
Mm,
20, 40 years. So
mm,
yes, doctors know, but they haven't got the illness.
mm,
So that was very empowering for me
mm,
to know that, yes, you know the illness, you've studied it, but I'm living with it. So
mm,
I know best. So when
mm,
he told me that, I was like, of course. Like, I've been knowing this all my life, well, not all my life, but all my life with this illness. But you telling me this makes makes sense and makes a difference. So that was very empowering for me. And I was like, yes, I'm going to advocate more for myself. And like I was saying before, advocating for yourself makes all the difference in care and how you receive that care. So it of course it's make a difference in how I show up to the world, because for me it was having an illness or a disability or a chronic condition, which are often intertwined. um takes a lot of you in the beginning. It's a process I've come to learn, um, of your identity and of your self-worth. You lose a lot of who you are sometimes and where you stand. But owning it, I think for me, owning it, like, yes, I have this, but that doesn't define me. It's part of me, but it's not who am I, has shifted a lot. And I think before I was ashamed of, oh, I have this, I'm not gonna disclose it. Now I'm like, yes, I have this, and it's okay. So I think that's it's one of the things that, um yeah, that's how I show up in life now. And that's one of the things that had made me start my page, because I'm not ashamed anymore. Because shame was part of like the concept that was like orbiting all the time around my life. And now it's not.
And absolutely, and thank you so much for that again. I'm just looking at your page, Instagram again, there, Mariola. Um, and listeners, if you are thinking, you know what, actually, Addison's disease, I didn't know much about before, and how can I learn more? Well, you can go on to the NHS website and search for Addison's, and there are very clear guidelines explaining the condition to you. And if you want to be in knowing more about from somebody with personal lived experience, you can follow Mariola, excuse me, on her Instagram page. It is Chronicles Community. Chronicles spelled CHRONICALLS space community. And there you will see lots of things that Mariola puts on regularly. And it's a way of better understanding the condition, but also being able to separate the person from the condition as well. That's why advocacy is so important. The fact that, you know, just because you have a condition doesn't mean this is the only thing about your life. No, actually, there's a lot more to that individual. And that's what's very, very important to understand, the fact that there's a human being in the middle of all of this who is equally important, has wants, wishes, desires, just like the rest of us, is able to do so much more. And we want to be celebrating their ability, not their disability. Disability is something that sometimes I tell people it's like your superpower. This is what makes you unique, even more important than other people, because the challenges in life that other people go through, yours might be even more difficult. And the fact that you could overcome them and then take part in, you know, interviews like this, for example, make you even more amazing. So absolutely, you know, and then in the UK, I think NHS generally think most people with the condition might be between the ages of 30 and 50, but it can sometimes affect children as well, as we heard from Mariola's case. She was 16 in her teens when she first started to feel the symptoms. And Mariola, you summarized the symptoms beautifully. And just to reiterate for our listeners, you know, things like extreme tiredness or fatigue, for example, could be a symptom. Areas of skin that are darker than surrounding skin. This may be harder to see on brown or black skin. So people color like myself and other people, they just need to be more cautious. Loss of appetite, weight loss, tummy pain. Um, these are things that we sometimes think, oh, it's just part of growing up. But actually, if they're frequent, then they need to be looked at. Feeling of being sick and craving for salty foods, feeling dizzy or lightheaded when standing up, joint pain, muscle weakness and muscle cramps, headache, a slightly raised temperature, feeling thirsty and needing to go to the toilet a lot, difficulty in concentrating, anxiety and depression. And if any of these things happen, please see your GP and book an appointment and let the GP have an opinion on what might be the underlying cause. We can only go by some of the symptoms here, but ultimately you do need to be seen by a doctor to be able to appreciate what might be going on within your body. We are headed to a short break very, very soon. Mariola, just to briefly summarize in the next 30 seconds or so, um, what we talked about before we go off to the break.
Yes.
So if you just want to summarize the condition in the next 30 seconds or so, please.
Well, it's when you don't produce enough cortisol. Your adrenal glands don't produce enough cortisol, so that's Addison's disease basically. So, and cortisol, you use it to basically regulate all your body functions and to fight infection, to fight illness. So, and when you are in a and to manage stress. So
Brilliant.
that's Addison's disease for
Yeah,
you.
brilliant. Thank you so much, Mariola. Listeners, please do come back straight after this break and we will talk more about the advocacy work that Mariola has been doing. So stay tuned. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Welcome back to second half of tonight's Send in the Community Show with me, Hafiz Muhammad Umar. This is a pre-recorded show, so please do not ring in and during the show. I know we have had some live shows recently, but this is a pre-recorded show. So anything that you hear in here will have been recorded in advance of the show. And for today, I am joined by Mariola, who campaigns for rare conditions. And if you were with us during the first half of the show, you will know that Mariola very beautifully summed up Addison's disease, something that she herself has, and it took her a long time before she was able to get the diagnosis. Mariola, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And thank you for having us. So we talked about the condition before the break, and you said this is your main condition. Are there any other conditions you've been diagnosed with?
Yes, I have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. I have POTS as well,
Mm.
postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, and I have mast cell activation syndrome. These three often overlap. They're comorbidities, so they are also they're hard to diagnose as well because they overlap with symptoms. But nowadays, their doctors are finding that these three conditions like kind of come together, and they think in the future they're gonna kind of make it a one, because they'll, like I say, they come to, if you are diagnosed with one, you probably will get diagnosed with the other one and then with the third. So they are calling it also like the trifecta, because they kind of come together.
Yep, sure. And I think, and that's what makes sense. And also, rather than dealing with three or four separate elements, it's all under one. Um, excuse me. So that's the condition. This is Mariola. And just remind our listeners of what your job is and what you're qualified for, please.
Yes, I'm a psychologist by training and an activist. Well, I came to that by obviously by experience, what I've been through. So I've decided to start this work by my life experience.
And absolutely amazing. The fact that despite all these illnesses, Mariola has been able to achieve something remarkable in life and is a real inspiration to so many other people. There are a couple of things I'll go back to what we were talking about before the break, Mariola. One around schooling and education. So I know different countries have different schooling systems, and you mentioned the fact that there was a period where you were homeschooled and only going into school for the exams, etc. So in the UK, if any of our listeners out there are thinking, you know what, I'm actually kind of going through a Mariola had gone through in her teenage years, or my child is going through at the moment, and does that mean that I must go into schools for exams, etc.? First of all, I'd like to reiterate the fact that each individual's needs and differences are not the same. So please do not assume the fact that just because you heard this show today, this is exactly what is happening to you. Please see a specialist, go to your GP, ask for a referral, and then take it from there. Secondly, for medical conditions, including Addison's disease, Crohn's, etc. There are lots and lots of things that can be put in place in schools in the UK. We have something called examination access arrangements. So from the age of 14 in secondary schools and beginning of year six in primary schools, if children are going to be sitting there end of key stage two SATs, for example, or GCSE exams, if you haven't already done so, please speak to the SENCO at your school, or your child's school rather. They will need the full information, confirmation of the diagnosis from a medical consultant or a specialist. Your GP is also a specialist. They need that letter confirming the illness. They may well ask for a meeting with you as parents or carers, as well as your child, to look at what is the best access arrangement that could be in place. So some of these could be, say, for example, 25% extra time with the exams. It could be a supervised rest break. So during the exam, if you're suddenly having a flare up and or your muscles are too weak and you are getting really fatigued and losing concentration, actually an invigilator can offer you that supervised rest break. Your time will pause in the exam. And if you need to leave the room to go outside for a little walk and come back, that can be allowed as well. When you come back, your time will start again. So that is something to bear in mind. Um, 25% extra time can be given in addition to the supervised rest break. So, say for example, you have an exam for 2 hours, you might you have to go through an assessment. And if you've got medical condition, then that letter it should be able to justify how much extra time you would need, and then you could be given that. But the key thing to remember is it's not only for exams. That needs to be your established normal way of working. That's why parents need to have a meeting with the SENCO and the head of year perhaps to make sure that the key staff are aware of your condition. Alongside that, if you out of a hand or wrist muscle are too weak and you can't write properly or at the pace that is required of a person of your age, you might be entitled to a scribe or a word processor. A scribe is somebody who can actually write for you. You can dictate the answers to them and they could write them down for you. That's perfectly legal, reasonable access arrangement that can be put in place. And if you're somebody who's quicker at typing than handwriting, and due to the weaknesses in your hand muscles, it is taking too long to write, you could be given a word processor to be able to do that. So these are some of the access arrangements to consider. And then depending on the severity of illness, if you are too weak to go into school in rare circumstances, we are talking about rare conditions here. So in rare circumstances, you could potentially do your exam from home or from the hospital and have remote invigilation put in place. But all of that has to be done through the SENCO at school in partnership with the exams officer. So if you're listening to Mariola's story and you're thinking, you know, oh gosh, this is really, really difficult for me. First of all, Mariola has very kindly told us that she was going through her schooling some about nearly 20 years ago. Secondly, the world of technology has changed massively in the last 20 years. So we've got to make sure that we are able to benefit from those. And then thirdly, different countries function differently. Mexico has so much, I think, to offer the world in terms of technology, etc. And there are, you know, a lot of amazing things there. There are other parts that are perhaps not quite up to speed. Here in the UK, I think we are similar, but in some cases, perhaps we are a bit more used to using technology in schools and educational institutes. So that is something that, if it's available, please do not suffer in silence. And then, under no circumstances, allow anybody to tell you you don't look ill enough, because that can be quite detrimental to your health even more so. And that's part of the reason why we have Mariola with us today, to A, have her story heard, and B, to empower other people. And Mariola, as I said earlier, a great ambassador to all people with, invisible illnesses and rare conditions, but particularly for young people. I say young girls, especially while we're going through this in the teenage years, thinking, you know, what's happening? What's the point? Nobody understands. Well, actually, people understand. Well, nobody cares. Of course, we do care. Otherwise, we would not be having this dedicated show once a week. We are really incredibly grateful to you for joining us today. And listeners, if you
Thank you.
have
Thank you.
just tuned in, you're listening to Sunny the Community Show with me, Hafiz Muhammad Umar. And today I am joined by Mariola, who's a psychologist, but also somebody who has a lived experience of Addison's disease, amongst POTS and other things. And we are talking about what it's like to live with those conditions and then why the advocacy is important. That's what we'll move on to now, Mariola. So tell us about why or how you came up with the idea of setting up this Instagram page and what was the inspiration there?
Well, I came up with the idea because with my lived experience and going through many, many doctors and hospitals and being for the last year and a half, every like month and a half in the hospital with infections, I was um, I was like, I want to do something more. And with my experience, with like I said before in the program, what had helped me a lot in accessing care and was advocating for myself. But nobody teaches you that, or nobody tells you that, or very few people tell you that. Like I explained earlier, like the nurse told me, okay, you need to take control of this illness. You need to know how to navigate it. Your body knows best. Nobody teaches you that. Like I think illness and disability is still a taboo around not even the UK but worldwide, especially from the country where I come from. Is like if you have an illness, it's like, oh, nobody talks about it. We should talk about these things.
Mm,
So what I want to do also is like we should make the um not normal things normal. Why are we still not part of the society? Like, why is it not normal, like to see, for example, I live like in my tube station, there's no lifts. Why is it not the rule? you know so
mm, mm,
that's part of the conversations we should be having. So I think awareness isn't just about information, it's about being seen, it's about being believed and supported.
mm,
When chronic and rare conditions and invisible conditions aren't understood, people are being overlooked and systems fail them. And this is why awareness is essential for life and for real changes in life. And there's also practices translate into tangible improvements for individuals and family, and I think we should talk about them. For example, they improve diagnosis, they increase treatment options, they increase research and development, they support patients and families, and I think one of the most important ones, especially for young people that experience illness very young or disabilities, is they eliminate isolation, which is something we all as young as people that get ill very young we experience. And we have no category in Instagram. Like I think the illness and disability community, we're the only community that anybody can join at any moment, because you don't know when you might get sick. You don't know when you might get an accident, when you can be disabled, when you can. And it's the only community that does not discriminate, no matter your race, no matter your religion, no matter your sexual orientation, no matter your age. Doesn't matter
mm,
who you
mm,
are, you will join whether you like it or not.
mm,
You will
mm,
join that community instantly. And
mm,
yet we don't have representation in Instagram. I was like, and it's the platform we use to connect with
mm,
other people like us.
mm.
So I was very shocked to find that. And I haven't received a response yet. I hope I receive one day, not only a response, but representation. So hopefully that will happen sooner rather than later. So let's see what happens.
Yeah, hopefully they'll be working on it as we speak and come back to you and say, thank you, Dr. Mariola. Here you go. This is what we've done. So it will be
Yes.
only hope. And if they don't, please do remind them. I think, you got over 400 likes there for that one post alone. And lots of positive comments, people totally agreeing with what you've done there. And it's those small but significant changes that are so powerful. You're talking about your tube station lacking a lift, for example. We live in Luton, it's a very vibrant town. If you've not ever been here before, please do come. We boast a beautiful airport. We have three train stations in Luton, yet the main Luton Central doesn't have a lift. So we have, a lot of uproar about that in the recent past, and we have been told that the local authority, the council, has earmarked some funding, and the work I think is due to start in this month. So hopefully that will get sorted soon. But you think that train station was and has been the main train station in Luton for decades, and it's something that should have been addressed many, many years ago. But at the same time, I think we can just continue to do our best in raising awareness and making people understand the fact that this condition isn't only from 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. It's a condition that's around the clock. You might get flare up at 3 o'clock in the morning, or you might be okay, and then suddenly it flares up an hour or two into work. And that's where that arrangements at workplaces of work are so important as well. We're talking about education earlier, and by law, quite rightly, the Joint Council for Qualification in England and Wales, JCQ, have very strict but very fair guidelines there, which all education providers must adhere to. Similarly, there is Equalities Act 2010, Section 4, which makes it illegal to discriminate against any person with a disability. And the conditions we're talking about are hidden disabilities. And that is something that we would expect employers to be able to take very, very seriously. And some of the arrangements can be quite easy to accommodate. We're talking about post COVID era that we're in now. Well, if the work requires a person to travel and they're too ill to get there, can they work remotely from home once or twice a week, perhaps? I know a lot of employers have now adopted this policy of working from home most of the week, or for somebody with a chronic illness, that could well be a small win for them, making sure that they are getting a little bit more rest rather than having to worry about and getting ready and catching tubes of trains or buses for a couple of hours before they need place of work. So these are some of the things that can be done. What are your thoughts on what else can be done to accommodate people with chronic illnesses?
Yeah, well, unfortunately, I think these illnesses are very unpredictable. So you don't know when you're gonna, like, you can be okay 1 hour and the next hour, like you said, that you can have a flare up at 3 a.m. That's very true. You don't know when you're gonna be okay next. So this is very challenging for all of us, for people with rare diseases, with invisible disabilities, with chronic illnesses. We don't know when our life becomes very unpredictable. So we don't know. So I think this is one of the challenges. Like, I think the biggest challenges we face in the workplace, or when returning to the workplace, or when we want to be part of it, we do want to work. Like, there's a big misconception about people with disabilities or with chronic illnesses. Oh, you don't want to work, you just want to be in your house. Of course not. So I think one of the biggest accommodations would be, that I have not encountered, to be honest, or just in many few places, maybe like Google, would be to have very flexible hours. Let's say if you have to do 8 hours a day, or if you're working half time, 4 hours a day, to do those hours as you wish during your day, because we don't know when we're going to be okay during those times. Or if you need to do 20 hours a week, you can do those hours as you wish. Because I can be okay right now as I'm talking to you, but I'm enduring a terror flare up with my endometriosis at the moment. So I will need to lay down as I hang up the call with you, and make up for this hour that I'm talking to you, and rest. And then, for example, I'm doing an hour of work, let's say right now. So I did that hour. And maybe in 2 hours' time, I'll be able to do another hour of work. But if you're working in an office or even from home with fixed hours, that's not going to be sustainable for someone with a fixed schedule. It will be for a week, but it won't be for the long term. So
Mm,
that's a huge barrier we face. So I think those kinds of accommodations are the ones that will really transform our lives. What we don't have yet,
mm,
or employers really cannot comprehend yet. Very few companies allow that for
mm,
for em- for employees, and I think they should see the bigger picture. We are disabled people and chronic illness um, people. We are a workforce that are so resourceful because have we have to be resourceful to keep managing what life throws at us.
mm,
That we are great workers.
mm,
So I think they should see that and
mm,
allow us to do those kinds of accommodations. So I think that would be like the greatest accommodation that we could have,
mm,
because most workplaces allow all the accommodations like working from home, or in kind of, I mean, it can be tricky sometimes to get it, but that accommodation, which is the one that we all need as people with disabilities or chronic illness, it's something we don't usually get.
mm. And thank you so much for sharing that. And I think these are some of the reasonable adjustments that can be considered. And listeners, if you're an employer out there thinking, I need my work done, some of you appreciate the fact that if it's practical, if you're running a shop or a restaurant, for example, and you need people to be there at those very moments to serve customers, that's totally understandable. We are talking here about the work that is perhaps office based, where you've got to be writing reports, etc., or you assess somebody as a psychologist, and then the reports can be written at another time. And if they need to be done by a certain date, then can there be a flexibility that, okay, you're working 8 hours in a day, you did your diagnosis or assessment for those 2 hours, and that report, it doesn't need to be done by 4 o'clock, for example, on the same day. That fluid flexibility, usually they allow a few days for the report to be done anyway, following your
Right.
diagnosis. So could that then perhaps be done at a time that's more, um, well, it's less draining and more medically convenient for the person who was appointed to do that. And I think there is a growing number of employers who are considering the mental health and well-being of their staff. And in many cases, are increasing the number of mental health first aiders trained to be able to support people at a point of crisis. And there isn't enough, but there is a growing number, which is a positive thing to be able to reflect upon. But I think you're right in the fact that if we can encourage more employers to consider people with disabilities who might be able to offer the support, but equally understand the need. Most application forms will have a section where you are expected to declare your disability or illness. And if you have a disability or illness, please do not ever leave that blank. Always make it very clear, be honest upfront from the application stage. The fact that this is who I am, and this is the condition I have, and then the employers have no excuse for not being able to make that accommodation or that adjustment. The difficulty is if you withheld that information at the application stage or at the interview, and you've not been able to then get it afterwards, then that can complicate things. So we encourage people to be able to have a really honest and upfront conversation with the employers. Right, we are coming to the end of the show now. Unfortunately, Tom has whizzed by. So what next then, Mariola? You are now an advocate. How do you see this going in the future? Are you expecting to expand on the Instagram page? Are you offering your time as a speaker, or are you writing anything? What are you doing?
Yes, I like to write a lot, so I think in my posts I do write. you, as you can see, I write. Sometimes I need to cut the writing, otherwise they become kind of letters or blogs. I want to start as uh, well a page that I want to link to my Instagram so I can write longer posts, because I see that I tend to write. I express myself easier on writing sometimes that on when I'm talking. I have still two languages on my brain, so sometimes I'm like, okay, I want to say something and maybe it's gonna come out in Spanish, or when I'm talking in Spanish it's gonna come out in English, so my brain is still is confused all the time. Um, so yes, I think writing is the form I express myself better. So yes, I want to keep growing my Instagram. I think it's going on a right path. Um, and to grow my advocacy work, I think it's what I like, where I'm the happiest,
Yeah.
not only professionally but personally, and where it all makes sense,
Yeah.
as
Brilliant.
where it all
Absolutely.
clicked,
Yeah,
so
thank you so much, Mariola. We are running out of time. Just to remind our listeners, Mariola's Instagram page is Chronicles Community. If you search for Chronicles, spelled CHRONICALLS space community, you'll be able to follow her there. And we are incredibly grateful to you, Mariola, for taking your time to join us today. Thank you so much. You take care and best of luck for the future.
thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for tuning in, listeners. Do join us again next week. Wassalamu alaikum.